Welcome to the program, Nicole Shanahan. We're thrilled to have you on, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good, Glenn. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you for multiple reasons, but we're not going to really talk about policies because I'm sure we disagree a lot on policies. But there is a bigger umbrella that we both really agree on, and that is the Bill of Rights and what is happening to our country right now. Can you take us from where you were when you first signed up with RFK, and what changed you to the point to where you're now saying, yeah, I mean, Robert is right. He should be running with Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a lifelong California Democrat, liberal. I've worked really hard over the last 15 years of my life to try to do the right thing, create, a merit-based society. I do it with a lot of love. I do it with a lot of desire. And I do it with a lot of science as well. I'm an AI developer in Silicon Valley, affiliated with Stanford now for over 10 years, went to law school in Silicon Valley, was an IP lawyer, an entrepreneur. So I, was very comfortable within the Democratic Party for many years, but I have to say something happened in 2016 that started a cascading series of events that has led to a amorphous in the Democratic Party that make it immoral, in my opinion, unprincipled, lacking honesty, lacking transparency, lacking competence. And they feel entitled to throw away very, very important principles like the Bill of Rights, principles like, our First Amendment, free speech, principles like not using sabotage in democratic processes. And they feel entitled entirely. And I've done this investigation. I did this investigation prior to leaving to the party because I tried to reform the party. I tried for years to find someone at the DNC. They gutted, any real leadership at the DNC. They put in a guy who's just, they don't even bother to talk to the official leadership at the DNC because they think it's irrelevant. It's just a carry-along program now. It's just a carry-along group that just is almost an administrative pocket for the Pelosi contingent. And so I saw it falling apart from the inside with a great deal of concern. And, at some point as a donor, they kind of just push you into a corner and they say, well, if you don't want Donald Trump, you have to support us. And that's their bottom line. That's all they have left as a policy is not Donald Trump. And my last response in the weeks before I left the party was that is not a policy. That is not leadership.
Yes.
You can't run on a platform of not Donald Trump. And
Nicole,
go on.
It amazes me that so many people are willing to say to the person who was the lowest ranked vice president, really despised by the people. She couldn't hold anybody in her office. Her policies were all upside down for America in 2020 when she was running for president. And now people are saying, oh, she's the greatest. Oh, she's great. They don't care about the policies. They're voting for an oligarchy. They're voting for a machine. They don't care.
Yeah. And, I think the thing that makes me really sad is that they're using these wonderful American sensibilities and they're abusing them to manipulate their voter base. And, she's a woman of color. She, is selling that for everything it's worth right now. And that, to me, is the kind of thing that goes against the very liberal principles that I was raised with. I was raised with, yes, we should have a social net. We should not be racist. We should
Right.
fight for the underrepresented. But that is not what this is. This has morphed into something else entirely that tells people that it doesn't matter how incompetent you are. If you can check a box of a minority on a sheet, that is enough, and you should be celebrated for that fact. And that to me is really sad. And that's why when people say, oh, the Democratic Party is all of these liberal progressives, that's not what that is. That is actually a form of racism, in my opinion, because it creates a hierarchy based on race.
Yes.
It
goes against everything Martin Luther King taught, everything that Martin Luther King taught.
Everything and all of the things I was raised on in Oakland
Yes.
as a little girl coming up, and I'm a brownish woman. I grew up in Oakland and Oakland public school systems, and I was in a very multicultural place. And these are not the principles I was raised with. So this is coming from someplace else. And it does ring more closely to what my mother grew up in communist China, which is this single narrative totalitarianism, which uses phrases and slogans and really kind of a form of cultural brainwashing to really solidify power.
So talk to me about, because I really don't mind. There's opposition in all things, and we should be having debates. I don't want my way or the highway, and I'm perfectly willing to accept that America might disagree with me and go another way and vote for another candidate. If we're actually talking about the issues, if we're actually talking about real policies, we're not lying to each other. We're not, just operating with chaos and confusion, or, rigging the system. But that's, I think, what's happening. And I don't know how, Nicole, we can reach out to our neighbors. I believe Democrats are good people. I think some of them are bad, just like some Republicans are bad. But the average person that lives, on my street that votes differently, I don't think they want totalitarianism. I don't think they want another war. How do we talk to them to get them to wake up and go, wait a minute, this is not what they say they are. This is not the Democratic Party anymore.
Yeah, I had, I'll just be honest with you, Glenn, my lived experience now running for office with RFK Jr. as a third party and seeing how low the Democrats went and how they qualified their behavior with these beliefs that, some of them know are just not true. Let's talk about what Rachel Maddow said about if Trump wins, he will be a dictator and he will send people like me to camps. That is a big statement for someone on the mainstream media to say. This is not a joke. And so people who respect the mainstream media are watching this and taking it as truth. And it really, I feel like my job has been trying to take statements like that and unpackage them for the Democrats who are listening to that and only receiving their news through these channels and telling them, I'm really sorry you believe this. It's a scary thing to believe. I know you believe it fully in your being right now, but she's lying to you. And let me tell you why.
So how do you convince people, Nicole? Go through that and unpack that.
Yeah, so I've been toying with different ways of doing this with my team. I don't know if you saw the ad we released last week.
I love it.
On Trump Derangement Syndrome.
Yeah, it is so
good.
good.
I had never even heard of that term until I went on Tommy Lauren and she used that phrase. And after my interview with Tommy, I had to look it up. And I thought it was really interesting because when I when I paired this idea of like, people are so afraid of Donald Trump for these reasons, for the reasons that, Rachel Maddow is propagating, it really creates a environment of psychosis. So I try to approach it in the same way I approach somebody who's having a really hard time. And maybe it's because they don't have full information, or they've been shaken by something or someone, or there's peer pressure around them. And humor always breaks through that first layer. If you can get people to laugh, they loosen up. It sends these happy chemicals through the body, and it actually opens up the brain for receptivity. So we produced that video for, I think, under $10,000, and it's gotten 65 million views. We didn't have to buy an influencer or anything. We just had to be good. We had to be funny. And we also had to kind of show truth in it. So if you go through that TDS commercial, there's a lot of truth in it. We don't, mince words. Right. We're really gentle. We don't even endorse Trump at the end of it. We're just calling for people's independence to return to them, their critical thinking. And they laugh. Like even the Dems who we showed it to laughed. Some people were resentful. There was my father-in-law actually is a never Trumper, and he found it. He was a little resentful, but he still chuckled. So that opened up a conversation that then allows us to dig a little deeper. And that next layer is really going point by point through all of the top 10 things that never Trumpers believe. They believe that January 6th was an insurrection and innocent service members on Capitol Hill died as a result. And so you have to unpack that. Megyn Kelly did a really, really good job with that one. But there are certain facts that are just being kept from Democrats about January 6th and the insurrection. For one, that Trump called for peace. He said, go forward peacefully. And then issues around the National Guard not being deployed. I mean, there were so many inconsistencies. And so unpacking that, and you just have to do it patiently, because there are some really smart Democrats. They just take time to get through. But once you get through that first layer of TDS, you can really start to debunk these. The second one is that, go on.
Go ahead. No, go.
I'll just go through the top three.
Okay. All right.
The second one I keep hearing about Donald Trump is he's bad for women and gays. And I've had many of my gay community come to me and say, how could you be supporting someone who could hurt me? And my response is, he was actually one of the first presidents on day one to say gay marriage was okay. He never attacked gay marriage.
Ever.
And they don't know that. People don't know that.
Yeah.
And then reproductive freedoms is the one that I hear a lot as well. And this is one in which I think that the Democrats really screwed themselves, because it was the Supreme Court, the highest court in our nation, handed down a effectively constitutional reframing of reproductive freedoms from being a federal issue to a state issue. That's all that happened. That's all that happened. And so when people say, well, he took away my reproductive freedoms, I'm like, what state are you in? They're like, New York. And they're like, well, my sister works at Planned Parenthood. I'm like, how many abortions did she do last year? And they're like, oh, she's done a lot, actually. So, I'm kind of just, trying to level set in the most compassionate way I can. Anytime you're dealing with somebody out of fear, the best thing to do is to have compassion.
Nicole, I would love to have you for a podcast. I find you fascinating, and I hope that more and more people catch on to what you're doing and wake up. Our republic depends on it. Nicole Shanahan, thank you. God bless.